What we have here is a blancher. It consists of a large volume of hot water that's used to cook food. In this case, it's Mr. Potato who's having a hot bath. Wherever there's boiling water, there's steam. And steam can lead to serious trouble. It's one of the biggest causes of structural and equipment deterioration in the food industry. If it stayed where it's needed, there wouldn't be any issue. But steam has a tendency to follow its own agenda, which is to rise as high as it can and cover as much ground as possible. Wherever steam goes, it causes damage. So we try to contain it as best we can. In the case of our blancher, a cover does the trick. It keeps most of the steam in. However, we have to leave a few openings for the food to get in and out. Rogue steam always escapes at the intake and the discharge end. And when the steam comes to rest on the ceiling and on the structures, it cools down. It condenses, and that's where the trouble begins. If it's a metal structure, you soon end up with rust. If they're painted, the water seeps under the paint, and then the paint cracks and chips, and eventually it falls off. Now, flaking paint and rust are not the kinds of things we want to be having for dinner, are they? Yet, where are we most likely to find these problems? Directly over the openings in the blancher, over the open product zones. If that's not bad enough, moist areas are perfect for microbial growth. Ideal breeding grounds for molds. Black mold often shows up when there's a combination of high humidity and a lack of attention. So to recap, steam leads to condensation, and condensation leads to flaking paint, flaking rust, and mold. Does that mean that all condensation leads to trouble? Well, not necessarily. It's perfectly fine for condensation to build up inside the lid of the blancher, which is sanitary. It's made of food-grade material, it's easy to clean, and it's cleaned on a regular basis. There are no bits and pieces falling all over the place. If condensate drips down, it's only clean water falling back into the food. It's quite another thing for condensate on overheads and ceilings to fall into the product zone. That water contains filth, paint flakes, mold, and rust. I think we'd all rather pass on those. Luckily, there's a simple way to deal with steam. It's the industrial equivalent to the range hood. Simply put, it's a big hood placed over the blancher's openings that contains a large fan that sucks the heat and the moisture away. Engineering air extraction can be quite complicated. On the other hand, figuring out if the unit is doing its job is very simple. If there's steam all over the place, the job's not being done. If you see steam coming out from the sides of the hood, there's a problem. Now when that happens, there are two main things to consider: the location of the unit and its capacity. Is the hood located where the steam is released or not? If not, move it to where it should be. If the location is good and you still see steam escaping, you might need a bigger fan, a bigger hood, or a better design. To recap, we need to remember three things. First, whenever you see flaking paint, flaking rust, or mold, remember to look for condensation. When you see condensation, look for steam. Second, condensation on a clean surface like the inside of our lid is okay. Condensation on a soiled surface is not, especially if it's above open product zones. And third, the best way to deal with steam is to remove as much as possible through air extraction. The two things to look at when the air extraction unit is not doing its job are location and capacity. Is it at the right place? And is it big enough to do the job? And that's all you need to know about steam.